Viewing or listening to this podcast confirms acceptance of the disclaimer visible on your screen or found at authorscott.com/podcast. Welcome to the Regaining Health and Humanity podcast. I'm Dr. Scott Johnson, your guide on this journey to natural well-being. Here we explore evidence-based insights, revolutionary breakthroughs, and powerful health strategies that not only inform, but inspire change. Together, we'll uncover the mysteries of human existence and unlock the secrets to thriving. This podcast is more than just knowledge. It's your catalyst for unleashing extraordinary potential. Get ready. Your journey to boundless health and happiness starts now. Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Regaining Health and Humanity podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Scott Johnson, and today we are going to discuss a trending wellness topic, that of earthing and grounding. These practices of connecting the human body to the Earth's surface and electrical charge are used to support the human body in many ways, including reducing inflammation, improving sleep, and reducing stress. So to discuss this topic, I've invited Dr. Andrew Doan to the show. Dr. Doan specializes in ophthalmology, aerospace medicine, neuroscience, public health, and gaming media personal technology addiction research. He received his MD and PhD degrees from the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine. He completed an internal medicine internship and ophthalmology residency at the University of Iowa. Then he went further and completed an eye pathology fellowship at the University of California, Los Angeles. With a desire to care for aviators and flight crew, in particular their mental health and physical needs, he completed a residency in aerospace medicine and a master's in public health at the Naval Aerospace Medical Institute. To better understand the impact of media and gaming addictions, Dr. Doan spent 3 years full-time with psychiatrists and psychologists to study and research media addictions. He has continued this research for over 13 years and to date has trained over 2,000 healthcare providers on media and gaming addiction. He practices comprehensive ophthalmology full-time and teaches online on his YouTube channel. Welcome, Dr. Doan. It's a pleasure to have someone with such vast experience on the show.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. And I just wanted to add that I am active duty officer in the Navy. So therefore, anything I share today is my own personal opinion and not the opinion of the federal government, the DOD, the U.S. Navy, or the DHA, which is the Defense Health Agency.
Well, first, thank you so much for that service. Can you explain what earthing and grounding are and how they are similar but different?
Sure. So earthing is the process of just taking off your shoes or having skin contact to the earth. And there are biological, mental, and physiological benefits of doing so. That's called earthing. Mm-hmm. Grounding is the process of using a device. And these devices allow you to sleep, sit, or just basically ground or earth indoors using a grounding product. So those are the difference when people use those terms.
I'm glad you kind of separated those because I think there's a lot of confusion and people often use the terms interchangeably. And there is that subtle difference of one is the technology use or a device use, and the other one is just your natural connection to the earth. What are some of the most common benefits people experience when practicing earthing or grounding regularly?
You know, just their mental health is better. I got interested in it because of my interest in behavioral addictions. So usually in addictive behaviors, people have trouble managing sleep and they just don't sleep well. And so insomnia is a huge problem. And so the biggest benefit that I see for most people is that they sleep better. But if you sleep better, you're going to benefit biologically in all aspects of your life. You're going to lose weight. You're going to get healthier. You're going to be more alert. You're going to be less depressed, less anxious. There is just so much healing associated with just proper sleep, of getting, high quality 8 hours a night sleep. And so I think those are the biggest benefits, but also there's other benefits too, as well as receiving electrons, for example, from the Earth. So the
Hmm.
Earth gets thousands of lightning strikes per day, just from thunderstorms all over the world. And that
Hmm.
negatively charges the Earth, kind of like a negative battery. Those electrons are essential for mitochondrial function. They are essential for the neutralization of free radicals, which are molecules in the human body that are missing an electron. And then it's also essential because the Earth has a certain frequency called the Schumann frequency. That frequency we have grown to basically adapt to live on this Earth with that frequency. And that frequency our cells and every single living thing just loves to be part of that frequency. And in part, I think this is why in aerospace medicine, it's interesting that if you look at astronauts or pilots or people who space travel, after 6 months to a year, their biological systems are all out of whack.
Hmm.
Okay. They don't like it. They come back sick. They come back really not healthy. So it's in part in my belief, and it's hard to prove this, is because it's hard to have a lab, experiment to show this, but it's all that encompass earthing and grounding, that we're connected to this earth, that leads to a healthier human being and a healthier body. And it's amazing though, because when the astronauts return back after a year, their body starts to heal. They're part of this earth. They're connected to this earth, and those are all biological functions that get restored. And we can talk about the scientific data that proves that theory, later in the podcast.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mention the electrons to neutralize free radicals, because we traditionally think of antioxidants as what we need in order to be electron donors and to neutralize free radicals, but they can come from other sources. And free radical damage can lead to oxidative stress, which can damage tissues and cellular function and biological function and lead to all sorts of issues, and is even associated with aging itself. So when you think of it from that perspective alone, grounding or earthing could have potential huge benefits to a human body.
Absolutely. So in the body, the molecule that's the antioxidant that we know about is glutathione. That's
Right.
stored in the liver. But the problem is glutathione is not an unlimited supply. So
Hmm.
imagine a human body, and this is how I describe it to people I talk to. When we're younger, we have better ability to be resilient in terms of fighting against free radicals, and we have the ability to produce antioxidants, glutathione, better than if we were 60 years old or when we get to 40. So what happens is if a human body is constantly being stressed out, being exposed to an agent, chemical, the foods that we eat are not healthy, causing inflammation, living next to power lines, and we're going to talk about that too later on, causing an EMF inflammation on the body, it's going to wear out our stores of glutathione and other antioxidants. So where do we turn to? We turn to pills. We turn to basically medications. We
Hmm.
turn to food. But the earth is also another source of electrons when we are depleted of our natural antioxidants. So often the naysayers, medical professionals like my colleagues who want to say, oh, well, you have glutathione, and they're assuming an unlimited store,
Right.
which is not true. We can run out of those antioxidants or run very low to critical levels. That's why people, when they're stressed out, develop cancer and develop other diseases, literally can stress themselves to death.
I agree. That's so important of a concept to keep in mind, and that we need to continually replenish our antioxidant stores and make sure that our body has enough antioxidant defenses. You've kind of touched on this a little bit in that discussion we just had about glutathione on electrons, transfers, or donors. But can you explain a little bit more about the science behind how connecting to the Earth's natural energy might impact our health?
Okay, so there's three mechanisms, or several mechanisms. First of all is the electrons. I talked about that. So that's just
Hmm.
electrons coming to the body from all the lightning strikes from the earth. And those electrons are used by mitochondria in our bodies to do whatever it needs for biological function. That's number one. The number two thing is that there was a study that showed grounding of NICU babies that are premature. And when you ground these babies, they had higher vagal tone. So the vagus nerve in the body is essential for mental health. It helps you to feel less anxious. It helps to regulate the body and calm. It helps to basically reduce your heart rate and just calm you. So by just connecting to the earth this way, and we don't know why, we just do know, because the experiment was these babies were either grounded or ungrounded in their NICU incubators, and the ones that were grounded showed statistically significant higher vagal tone. And so these babies healed and were discharged from the NICU faster than the ungrounded babies. It's a small study, but the beautiful thing is that with grounding and earthing, you don't have to go get a prescription. You can try it yourself. And if you feel better, you feel more calm, keep on doing it because it's working for you.
And it's such a simple and non-invasive way to help these babies. So that's an incredible study.
It's incredible, right? And so that's the second thing. But the third one, which not a lot of people talk about, which I'm very interested in as a public health doctor, as an aerospace medicine doc, is the EMF pollution that's now exerted onto our bodies. So what I mean by this is that extremely low frequency electrical wiring, I'm not talking about the 5G and all these things. Those are different. So 5G is gigahertz. Right. I'm talking about 50 to 60 hertz, which is 50 to 60 cycles per second. Now, there are health issues with the higher frequencies, but that's a whole different discussion. What we do know about earthing and grounding is that it can actually counteract the EMF at 50 to 60 hertz electrical induction of abnormal alternating currents on the human body. What I mean by that is that, and I've done this test, I was next to power lines. I walked underneath the power lines with a voltmeter on alternating current, and I should not have alternating current in my body. So as a neuroscientist, I can say that the electrical conductance in the brain and everything is all direct current. We do not have alternating currents. But with the voltmeter underneath the power lines running at 50, 60 hertz, I can actually induce about 12 volts, which is 12,000 millivolts on the body, alternating back and forth in my body at 50 to 60 cycles per second. So now that's problematic for the human body. Yeah. That means that your neurons, let's just look at the neurons, one simple biological system, the neuron. The neuron is an electrical conductance type of biological function. But it's mainly functioning on ion-gated channels that are voltage-gated, meaning that these ions in the neurons open up when they get to a certain voltage. That certain voltage is about plus 30 millivolts. It doesn't take much to open these channels. So these control like sodium, potassium, calcium. These are all responsible for second messenger systems in the body to control everything. Your thought, your sleep, your healing, fighting cancer cells, everything. So can you imagine if you're next to a power source that's causing alternating current through the body that I can measure in voltage, not even in millivolts, voltage. These ion channels are going to be spasming. They're going to be leaking. You see where I'm going with this, right? Yeah. So we don't know. So there was a paper I dug up that showed that basically this doctor looked at all cons and benefits of activating these ion channels with extremely low frequency electricity. Now, there were pros, but there were cons. The problem is when you have an uncontrolled source, uncontrolled source of electromagnetic energy, we have no idea what it does in the body. However, if we take that electromagnetic energy and actually focus it as a controlled source, in medicine, we actually use that magnetic stimulation in the brain for the treatment of anxiety and depression.
Right.
Where it's a focal. But remember the incidents in Cuba where people got sick and they don't know how they got sick?
Yep.
It was some kind of sound wave or electromagnetic. We don't know. But that was a weaponized thing where all these State Department people got
Yep.
sick in Cuba. We can get sick by electromagnetic frequencies that are out of control, that are too high or erratic that we're living in. And so when you earth and ground, it mitigates that. So when all that body voltage, when I was underneath the power lines at 12,000 millivolts, 12 volts, I touched the earth, it went to zero.
Very interesting. And I think a lot of people just fail to remember that we are electrical beings and that electricity in our body can be measured by various scientific instruments. And so we need to keep some focus on that and make sure that we're not allowing that to get too far out of whack. When you think of grounding or earthing, are there any specific health conditions or ailments that you would say, yeah, this would be great to help improve with these two methodologies?
Yeah, so people with high cholesterol and also high blood pressure, earthing and grounding, the research has shown they're small research because no one's done these big research, but the papers have shown that you get about a 10% drop in your high blood pressure.
Mm.
My father-in-law suffers from malignant hypertension where he was on like 5 meds, just like really bad high blood pressure, and it was still going up. So I got him a grounding mattress cover and he sleeps grounded, and he was able to drop his blood pressure to the point where the doctors had to lower his dosage and even remove some medications.
Yeah.
And so, but personally, I've dropped 10% of my cholesterol as well as 10% of my blood pressure as well.
Oh, yeah. So there's some cardiovascular benefits, obviously, which makes total sense with how the cardiovascular system works. But I also want to ask, and I know there's biological uniqueness and that's involved, and so this is a difficult question. When I'm asked, well, how long am I going to get better? It's like, well, everybody's a little different, everybody's journey's different, but in general, how long would somebody need to practice grounding or earthing before they might start noticing effects or benefits?
So this is the way I put it. So I have a glass of water right here, right? And so water is essential. But if you're dehydrated, a glass of water will help you feel immediately better within 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the scenario. So if you're really having problems because your body has high inflammation, not sleeping, all these things, and you start to ground, you could actually feel an effect the second day. And that's what happened with Clint Ober, because he was suffering from all these. Clint Ober is the founder of Earthing and Grounding. And so he's also the founder of the company earthing.com. And so Clint felt better immediately in one day. But if you're generally pretty healthy, you take care of yourself, you're sleeping well, you're eating well, you're exercising, all that, you may not feel anything different. And so you'd be saying, hey, you know what? I don't feel anything different. But I would recommend people to continue grounding, because it's kind of like if you're completely hydrated, or let's say you're overhydrated, you drink a glass of water, and you're like, I don't feel anything different. Actually, my stomach kind of hurts a little bit because I'm not thirsty. But you can't just stop drinking water because your body biologically needs it. So I think earthing and grounding is synonymous to actually drinking water, breathing air, and doing things that we need on a daily basis to live.
So in your perspective, it's a foundational thing that should just be continued almost as a preventive or a health maintenance type of activity.
Absolutely.
So here's a question I don't know if there's an answer to, but I found it interesting when I was researching and trying to get more information about this topic and prepare for the podcast. Is there a difference in benefit between walking barefoot on different substances, say grass or sand, or maybe there's water involved?
Yeah, so you want to be somewhere that's moist as possible, but definitely different substrates will have different conductivity. So it's about conductivity to the earth itself. So basically, grass is great. Living things like that, or green living things, are great conductors because they have cells and they have electrolytes and they have water within the stems. So when you're walking on those things, it's really good. Rocks, not so good because rocks, tend to not conduct as well, but it is actually adequate. But I think the best way to alleviate all that, where should I walk, question, is just to get a grounding device. Get
Mm-hmm.
a grounding pad, sit on it when you work during the day. I think it's best to sleep grounded because with all those electromagnetic energy that's placed onto your brain and your brain can't rest because it's all stimulated, then sleeping grounded, you're going to get like a twofer, right? You're going to get the electrons that you need, you get the Schumann frequency, so actually a threefer, and then you also get the benefit of really good sleep. And so just have to make sure that how you're grounding is actually adequate because not all home electrical systems are wired the same.
Yeah, and it's a good suggestion to have the grounding mats or technology because there are sometimes the year where it's difficult to ground. I live in Utah, and in the winter, if there's snow out there, I don't really want to go walk barefoot into the snow. But having a device allows me to still have that connectivity and still get those benefits as a part of the maintenance that you're talking about and keeping ourselves healthy. Um, you've already kind of stated this, that it can impact our mental health, but can you talk maybe a little bit more about it, in what impacts it has on mental and emotional well-being, such as maybe stress or anxiety, depression, those kind of things?
So I've given a lot of lectures around the world on mental health and addictive behaviors. And it's interesting is that when I've coached over 2,000 healthcare providers and they share with me their clinical experience and they tell me that earthing and grounding really helps people with post-traumatic stress disorder. Those who are anxious, those who have trouble with dealing with PTSD, when they ground, they sleep better, they recover, and some patients swear that that's the only thing that keeps their PTSD in check. Not
Mm,
medications, not any other thing, but grounding and earthing. And then in mental health wise, I mentioned that sleep is everything for
yeah.
healing. Sleep is important for mental health. Sleep is important for just feeling like controlled and regulated. And so that's where you're going to see a huge benefit. Earthing and grounding also helps by going out in nature, by connecting with nature and being outside helps your mental health. It improves your outlook in life, reduce your anxiety, reduce your risk for depression. It's just, all around just a wonderful thing to do.
I agree. There's some practices, such as in Japan, where they do forest bathing, was what they call it, where they're walking through the forest and inhaling the phytoncides or the terpenes that are released from the trees in the environment and reaping benefits. And the Japanese have found many benefits to that: cardiovascular benefits, immune benefits, sleep benefits. So it's interesting that so many things that we can do, just reconnecting with nature, have such a significant impact on our health. Are you aware of any potential risks or contraindications for grounding, especially for people with any specific health conditions or sensitivities?
Sure. So grounding decreases the clumping of red blood cells.
Okay.
So essentially, it's like thins your blood.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're taking anticoagulants, Coumadin, aspirin, Plavix, any of those anticoagulants because you have a heart condition or a stroke before, it's best to talk to your doctor and say, hey, I'm grounding. It potentially could cause a change in my clotting factors so they can adjust the medication. Those with thyroid disease, hyper and hypothyroid, the grounding can actually make it worse. And so
Mm.
you have to ask your doctor, work with your doctor to adjust those medications appropriately. We're still learning about like all the medical stuff because we haven't done a lot of research yet. There's only, maybe a couple dozen, maybe 3 dozen research papers, which is nothing, in terms of the field of medicine and healthcare. So there's other disorders too, but we just don't know them all. Another one would be Lyme disease. for,
Okay.
with the chronic infection of Lyme, you, you just got to be very careful because for some reason it makes it flare up. So I run a discussion forum on Facebook, and now we're up to like 42,000 people who are in that group. And it just, the Facebook group is Earthing and Grounding Heals. And people share their experience. And so those with Lyme disease, they tend to take grounding slowly and work up to it. So
Hmm.
they'll maybe do it like 30 minutes a day for a week, and then increase it to an hour for a week, and then 2 hours for a week, and then 4 a week, and then maybe, end up 8 hours a week, and then eventually try to sleep grounded as well. So those are the conditions. But if you're concerned, the earthinginstitute.net is a website that's the nonprofit arm of earthing.com. And so earthing.net, Gatan Chevalier, he's a Dr. Chevalier, he's a PhD, has worked with a lot of researchers, works with earthing. He is biomedical, electrical expert. He is very smart. So he and others have ran that site. Actually, Dr. Sinatra, before he passed away, he just passed away from just recently, from old age, but he was a cardiologist who also worked on that site. Um, and so earthinginstitute.net, you
Hmm.
can search for disorders and other people's experience with particular medical disorders to see how they responded with earthing and grounding. And it's an incredible resource.
Yeah, that is a good resource. Because this is so new and novel, it's something that a lot of people just don't have expertise in. And if they probably went and talked to their doctor, they would give them the deer in the headlights stare, like, I have no idea how to guide you through this in most cases. And so having the experience of others with similar conditions or similar health situations is definitely going to be beneficial. And it makes me, my mind's going, well, I'd love to know the mechanism behind what's making it worse with Lyme or people with chronic
Right.
infections like that, and also how it's affecting the thyroid, because I know the thyroid is very sensitive, especially to toxins and other assaults. So maybe there's some connection there, but
And
I,
I should mention
yeah, go
one
ahead.
thing, Dr. Johnson, is that cancer. A lot of people ask about cancer. Well,
Mm-hmm.
inflammation can cause cancer because inflammation causes cells to die. When those cells die, they replicate. Other cells replicate, and that DNA replication process can have an error rate. So the more inflammation, the more cell
Mm-hmm.
death, the higher the risk for basically cancer, progression. And so earthing and grounding would help you prevent that in terms of cancer. However, once you have the cancer, we don't know, right? So the earthing and grounding advocates want to say that it cures cancer or it
Mm-hmm.
helps you with cancer. And I, as a biological scholar, say, well, once a cancer becomes a cancer cells, and this is where my background in eye pathology helps, because that's all I look at is cancer cells on the face.
Mm-hmm.
Once a cell becomes cancerous, it uses the same requirements for growth as a normal cell. That's why it brings in new vessels. That's why it needs food. That's why it needs oxygen. That's why it needs all these growth factors to help it to grow. So therefore, if earthing and grounding can help normal cells to thrive, it may accelerate cancer cells. And I just don't know that because there's so many types of different cancers. We just
Right.
don't know, but I just want to warn people that if they have cancer, they may want to take earthing and grounding very carefully
Right.
because I just don't know. I hope it helps, but it makes sense that it may help and it may not help.
I think it's something that you just want to continue to work with your medical professional if you have some sort of condition that you're dealing with, because there may need to be adjustments in the therapies and the drugs that you're taking and in any kind of treatment that you're receiving. And they would be capable and best able, because they know your history and they have your blood work, and they can monitor things and watch to see how they need to adjust your care and treatment as you are using this alongside, traditional medical approaches. Dr. Doan, last question. We've talked about research, but is there anything else in the latest research on grounding or earthing that you think is fascinating or that you'd want to share with the audience?
I do. It's a kind of an older study, but these were
Mm-hmm.
neuroscientists back in Poland, I believe, and they wrote a paper to show the EEG, the brain waves of grounded versus ungrounded patients. And this to me is fascinating because at half an hour, they turn on a switch. So the people that were earth and grounded did not know whether they were earth or grounded, but their brain waves changed just like that. As soon as they switched on the grounding, their brain waves change. So the brain waves that are really high actually became like middle. The ones that were low became middle. So for some reason, earthing and grounding brings you to a frequency. Maybe it's the earth. I don't know. But what it is that if you're high, it brings you here. If you're low, it brings you there. I just know that it helps people clinically. And as a neuroscientist, I'm like, wow, that's how I want my brain. I want my brain here. I don't want my brain activity to be here. I don't want my brain activity to be down here. I want it to be right here because I know from my history of insomnia and trouble sleeping and other issues, earthing and grounding, I've been doing for 5-6 years now. And I love it. Sleeping, I sleep so well. And I'm like 53 now. So I sleep better in this next decade than I did in the previous 50 years of my life.
That is fascinating because it seems like it has some sort of balancing effect, which in natural medicine, that's what we're often looking for, is a balancing effect on certain biological systems or processes, because it's when they go out of balance and they're hypo or hyper that we start to see issues. So I hope that scientists will continue to research this further and explore it more to reveal these mechanisms by which it's contributing to our health and help us get more and more benefits. Well, thank you, Dr. Doan, for being on the podcast today. I think it was an enlightening conversation, and there's a lot of good information for the listeners to unpack and to hopefully start applying into their lives. And so I appreciate your time and your dedication to this field and to helping especially our vets and active military. That's a population that I too really have kind of a soft heart for. So I'm glad you're helping them.
Thank you very much. It has been a pleasure.
Thank you for sharing your time with us today. I hope you've gained insights to elevate your health and life. For more transformative evidence-based wisdom, I invite you to explore my 20-plus books at authorscott.com/shop. Don't miss out on the chance to supercharge your health and guide others to a better life. Like, share, and subscribe to join the movement transforming lives. Here's to your journey toward boundless health and happiness.